I'm going to slay you. This is why people get stuck in this personal growth loop they can't get out of, because we need to slay the dragon. And this is misaligned because those aspects of ourselves, they have no choice but to become louder, sneakier, or even more extreme. Because all these aspects of ourselves, they're fighting for survival even more now than ever, because they keep being banished, ostracized into the dark, and they want the light. There's 3 different frames I want to give to you here, reframes. So instead of slay the dragon, banish the inner critic, silence the voices, here are 3 more reframes that you could try. Meet the dragon, become curious about the critic, listen to the voices long enough to understand what they're afraid of, ashamed of, what is really going on. Really become curious what these parts need, want, and how they want to be understood. Hello, and welcome back to a Transformed Life podcast. I'm so glad you are joining me today. I want to share at least one quick thing with you, maybe 2 if we have time with this topic, and share a personal story first of all. So last month I had a pretty busy day, or like I like to say, productive day. And I wasn't able to go to my beloved trails, and so I took a walk around the neighborhood behind me, and it's a very fancy neighborhood. And as I was walking down the sidewalk, there was a gentleman who was grilling, and of course, being me, I always am friendly, and I said, good evening, hello, I'm coming over. And he was like, it's grilled chicken, I hope you like it, come on in. And I continued walking, and as I was walking, I was thinking about what he had shared with me. And I really felt Source speak to me in that moment. And this is what Source said to me. Will you receive what you've been asking for? And it came through the form of a guy who was outside grilling for his family and invited me in to enjoy a meal. So as I finished my out and back loop, I was on my, way back, and I was like, do I go in? Do I knock on the door? Is he really expecting me? I mean, how many people, say things they really don't mean? This was probably one of them right up there. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I'll share with you next one of the reasons for doing it. And at this particular, when I was doing this, I was also in a season of my life where I was saying yes to things that I wanted. And that's why Source was so clear. Like, will you receive this yes that I'm giving to you? Or are you going to say no and walk on by? It was such a powerful metaphor. So I get back to the house, and I went up to the door and I knocked, and he came over and he said, open the door. And when he opened it, this is what I said. I said, you miss 100% of shots you don't take. And he was like, yes, you do. And I took that opportunity of him inviting me in for a meal and signaling to the universe that, yes, I am available. I am ready. And it's such a powerful metaphor for life. Where have you been asking life to give you what you want? And are you answering that call? It might not be in the way you think it will come. And it might even be a opportunity given to you that you aren't even aware of. And that's why it's so critical to be aware of all these opportunities. I'm not a big fan of tests and lessons. It seems it's very power heavy, not good power. It's more of an oppressive power. So I like to look at them as like invitations or opportunities. This guy who was grilling and simply said, "Come on in." How can you apply that in your life? Where are you walking right past that door of opportunity and not recognizing the gifts that are right in front of you? And when I, knocked on the door and I said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take," I signaled to the universe that even though these are complete strangers, I'm really not sure why you're asking me to knock on this door. I am going to do it anyway. I am your vessel. I say yes. This is a declaration. This is a commitment. And I'm inviting you to apply that in your life. Where can you say, "You know what? Yeah, this is a little uncomfortable. Yeah, it's, strangers on the other side of the door. They don't know who I am. Are they even going to open the door?" Like, you can go through all these different scenarios of basically talking yourself out of something that you really want. And what are you signaling to the universe? Excuses, complacency, lack of effort, a lack of commitment to really what you want. And for me, I knew an aligned yes. I'm going to take you up on your offer because I'm taking you at face value of what you said. And this is also a really important reminder. Mean what you say. If you really don't want that person to come over for dinner, then don't invite them. Don't say, "Come on in." Because when you say, "Come on in," that person is going to take you up on that offer. And so be very mindful with your speech and how you are showing up in the world. And so I just love this example that happened in my life, and I wanted to share it with you because it is it's so powerful how we show up in our lives. How do we lead? And even on the dark days and the tough moments in our life, how do we lead ourselves? Because how we lead ourselves is how we lead others. Whether it's our teams, whether it's our families, whether it's in community. And when I say how do we lead ourselves, it's like, how are you showing up for yourself? Are you staying committed to your daily practices? Waking up in the morning and staying committed to movement, hydration, proper nutrition, mindfulness, whether it's meditation or prayer, specific breathing, nervous system repatterning movements, neurofeedback. There are so many ways of how you're leading yourself. And if you feel like you are being more pulled by what is happening externally, and you are just at the whim and mercy of whatever is happening in your life, you can take your power back right now by saying, "You know what? I commit to leading myself no matter what." Obviously, with the resource of God, source herself. And when you begin to lead yourself, you will feel energetically empowered through your day as well. And as you do so, you're going to cultivate that internal energy, which is really the energy you desire, not the energy, not the superficial energy from caffeine, coffee, other, caffeine type drinks. When you can lead yourself through integrity and inspiration, that is the motivation you need, because motivation is internal. You can read all the motivational quotes and read the books and listen to the speeches and whatnot. Motivation comes from within. So my invitation to you is to really look at where you are showing up in life, where you aren't showing up in life, how you can fully lead yourself into alignment, whether that is through, your business, company, team. And when you get, very well versed in leading yourself, then you can translate that out into your ecosystem. So I wanted to talk about that. I also want to talk about another topic. We may even make this a part 2. Well, let's see. I think I'm going to save this. I will tease it for this. 50-50. This concept is, or this term is used in marriages. It is used more frequently in custody battles. It's also like under the disguise of shared parenting, but it's 50-50. And I'm going to be doing I think I'm going to do a separate podcast. I'm going to talk about something else in a second. A 50-50 is very ego, selfish based, driven. When everything has to be divided equally down the line, it comes from this place of neediness, trying to prove yourself, not in the best interest, in this specific case, of the child. And we have so many, particularly fathers, who are really weaponizing the court system against mothers to either have, shared parenting or 50-50. Cutting the child in half of like, he's going to spend 2 nights with me and then 2 nights with you. And like, we're shuttling a child back and forth, and the child has no stable one place where he lays his head. The child is living out, or children, the children are living out of a suitcase. What adult wants that? And I know even adults who travel for work, they don't like to live out of a suitcase either. And why are we making children shuttle back and forth for your own egotistical, unhealed desires? So we'll leave that for a whole separate podcast. There's a lot to talk about that, on how 50-50 is ego-driven and it's not based in the laws of nature, laws of God, and source. What I will want to say right now is there is this term in personal growth, and it has to do with slay the dragon, kind of banish the inner critic, kill the inner critic, and this is pretty misaligned. And these terms, it's violence with just better branding. And all these inner aspects of ourself who are afraid, ashamed, or protective, and your responses could be, oh, I'm going to eradicate you. I'm going to banish you. I'm going to stuff you under this cover, and I'm not going to see you again. I'm going to pretend you don't exist. I'm going to slay you. And this is why people get stuck in this personal growth loop they can't get out of. Because a lot of personal growth has taught we need to slay the dragon. And this is misaligned, because those aspects of ourselves, they have no choice but to become louder, sneakier, or even more extreme, and even causing more disruption in our life. Because all these aspects of ourselves, they're fighting for survival even more now than ever, because they keep being banished, ostracized into the dark. And they want the light. They seek the light. And so there's 3 different frames I want to give to you here, reframes. So instead of slay the dragon, banish the inner critic, silence the voices, here are 3 more reframes that you could try. Meet the dragon, become curious about the critic, listen to the voices long enough to understand what they're afraid of, ashamed of, what is really going on. Really become curious what these parts need, want, and how they want to be understood. And so, inner critics, they typically have started with, as a loyal bodyguard trying to prevent humiliation. Maybe it's a scared inner child repeating what was said to them. A perfectionist part could come in, and that believes if I hurt you first, no one else can. And when these are exiled or slayed or banished, the shame doubles, could even triple. And when you stay and witness and offer care, compassion, curiosity, that same part can soften into discernment instead of judgment, standards instead of self-attack, protection instead of sabotage. So in my framework and my methodology is we don't slay dragons around here. We sit with them until we remember they were sacred inner childs in these little costumes that are now being reworked in our adult life. I teach that your inner critic isn't a villain to be banished. It is a part of you that doesn't know any other way to keep you safe except criticism. So we transform that. Exiling your inner critic just creates a louder exile. And what we exile escalates. And when we welcome, it can relax. Banishing the voice doesn't heal the wound. Hearing the voice with compassion does. You don't need a sword. You need a seat at the table for every part of you. That thought attack equals protection. And yeah, I want you to, realize how things are, really, seemingly like slay the dragon because it's really causing me a lot of pain. And we really need to move at these from, the surface. Like on the surface, it sounds very empowering. However, to take your power back, we can't kill the thing inside you that keeps getting in your way. And so, these dragons, inner critic, the voices in your head that just won't, keep quiet, they're not villains. They're all aspects and parts of you. And this is why they keep popping up. Because they're going to pop up until you recognize them. Until you offer them care and compassion. Until you bring them into the light. And it has to do a little bit with shadow work. And so, these scared, loyal, often very young aspects of ourselves that learned somewhere along the way, I'm hard on you first, maybe no one else will hurt you. And it's such a pivotal reframe. Think about any relationship in your life. If every time someone brought you a fear or a concern, you said, "Shut up, you're the problem. I'm going to get rid of you." Chances are that person would either disappear or start screaming. And inside your system, those people are your parts. They're your inner aspects. They're the younger versions of you that have been stuck in a certain age. They, were bullied or abused or, something happened to them and they need to go through that experience to be healed and come out on the other side. We don't need to kill them. We don't need to banish them. We don't need to slay them. And yeah, just a reminder that shame is I am bad. Guilt is I did something bad, two very distinct things. And when we use the slay, banish, exiled language, it feeds the shame. It feeds the I'm not good enough. It feeds something's wrong with me. It feeds I am bad. And so we really need to be very mindful of our language. And so the goal is to humanize this critic and the dragon, the inner voice, and become a champion, become a compassionate caregiver. Go back and listen to the Self-Caretaker Experiment podcast. It is very powerful. And just remember that whatever you exile is going to escalate. And we don't want to escalate something that wants to be transformed, that wants to be healed, that wants to be seen, that wants to be heard and understood. Whether it's a 2-year-old part of you or a 4-year-old or a 10-year-old or an 18-year-old. Meet those parts with care and compassion. Have you ever tried not to think about something? So if I say right now, don't think about the pink elephant, don't think about the pink elephant, don't think about the pink elephant, what's going to come up for you? You're going to think about the pink elephant. And that's your brain. Cool. Here's a 24/7 pink elephant live stream. We're going to continue to have these dragons, inner critics come up in our life until we actually turn to them and give them what they seek, give them light, and give them what I keep coming back to, care and compassion and understanding. Okay, I see you. What are you afraid of will happen if you stop talking like this? And that same part finally has a chance to exhale. And those parts will begin to heal and become quieter once they're integrated into your life. So from sword to a seat at the table, you can, step one is to name the part. Instead of my inner critic is ruining my life, for your invitation, a part of me is really worried I'm going to fail at this. So it's yelling at me. Shift from I am to a part of me is. That way you're not identifying as this. And you can ask this part of you, what are you afraid of would happen if you stopped criticizing me? Who do you remind me of? When do you remember first showing up? Step 3, offer reassurance, not rejection. You can say some of these sample lines to them. Thank you for trying to protect me. I know you've carried this for far too long. You don't have to attack me to get my attention. I'm listening. I'm an adult now. I can handle more than I could when I was little. And then 4, set boundaries with the part. This is really important. You're not letting the critic or that, younger aspect run the show. I hear you, and I'm not going to speak to myself that way anymore. You don't have to leave, and you do have to stop screaming. So go back to kind of the self-caretaker, and you want to be a self-caretaker, not a self-slayer. Because the self-caretaker listens, translates, and sets boundaries, rather than exiling the parts that make you uncomfortable. And just a simple guided practice as we end our show for today. If it's safe for you to do so, you can close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take a deep breath in and out. And I want you to bring to mind one thing you've been really hard on yourself about lately. The thing you keep shooting yourself over. Notice what the inner voice says about that. Maybe it calls you lazy or stupid or too much or not enough. Now, instead of arguing with it or trying to shut it up, I want you to imagine turning toward it and just ask, what are you afraid of will happen if you stop talking to me this way? See what arises. Don't fix it. Don't debate it. Simply listen. And then, from the most grounded, caring place in you, offer one sentence back, like, thank you for trying to keep me safe. I am here now. I'm not going to abandon you or myself. Take 2 more breaths. And when you're ready, you can come back to the room. So if this landed for you, I would love to hear from you and how this reframe can really transform your life and give you a new perspective on those inner voices that have been causing stress and anxiety in your life. I will see you next time. Have a beautiful day.